All right, here we go. So here we are. You come out of the birth canal, and the most important thing that the mother is supposed to do is help the child make a transition for the next 9 months. And that's one of the reasons why the nurses put the baby on the mother's stomach so there's warmth. The most important thing that a child wants coming out of the womb is, I can't read this, closeness, warmth, and acceptance. Susan Piver wrote a fabulous book called How Not to Be Afraid of Your Own Life. She starts, or in the 3rd page, she says this: when a child comes out of the womb, the last thing he's concerned about is the size of your thigh, your Gucci bag, and what kind of car you drive. All they want is warmth, closeness, and acceptance. My father is 97. He wants the same thing. I want the same thing, and so do you. That's what everything always gets reduced down to. However, many of you have mothers that had issues, whether they didn't learn to do it properly, whether they just brought into the experience their own stuff, but every single client I have has issues with her mother. There's a lack of trust. And it comes from, at birth, the bonding piece of it is critical, especially if you are nursing. And I'll explain to you why. The child's saliva attaches to the mother's breast, and it sends a message to the mother of what the child is depleted in. So let's say the infant needs vitamin B. It signals the breast goes, oh, we need vitamin B, and it calls down for vitamin B, and the next milk, it comes to the baby. Okay? But the other piece of it is the child gets to experience the mother as anticipating her needs. That's where trust starts, because if you repeat it enough, it becomes predictable, right? It doesn't matter what you do, right? So the child starts to believe that the mother will take care of him. Great. That's how self-esteem gets started. That's how the trust, because it goes from birth to bonding to trust to your self-esteem. Pick up the wagon wheel. Oh, wait, I get to use this thing, don't I? Amazing. All right. What's the wagon wheel say? Everything is related. Everything. It doesn't matter what's your clothes, your medicine cabinet, your car, your job, and how you treat your dog. And what does that say? If you have the center that's cracked, that is your self-esteem. The wheel will wobble. Your job in your journey of self-awareness is to put together the hub so it doesn't wobble anymore. Okay, that's going to be the result of what you do on your journey. Let's see. Now, we're going to go on some tools. I'm going to run, that might back, wait, right, so, right, okay, timer you got, good. Okay, so here's this is, I love my tools. I made this thing up. I have so much fun with it. Okay, here we go. It is likes and dislikes. So there you are, you're cranky. There you are, you're ready to bite somebody's head off, or someone just bit your head off. And how do you manage the moment? Everything that you should be doing is gearing you towards being in the present. Being present is when you have the most control. As soon as you drift away, for whatever reason, you've lost control. So, what you do with likes and dislikes is the column on the left are the things that you love without judgment. So, for example, for me, I like those little drink umbrellas, right? So much so sometimes when I go in and I go into a restaurant, I'll order like a scotch with a drink umbrella, which gets the bartender very mixed up. I love to read. I love to talk to my best friend. I love to spend time with my cat, right? I love to talk to people like you, right? So that's on my list of things that give me pleasure. On the things on the right are the things that I'm very wary of, and which is another way of saying I don't like them, right? So I don't like going to a family function where there are members of my family who are wacky, right? I don't like noise. You'd never find me at a concert unless it was Frank Sinatra, then I could manage that. The dislikes is a really important column because if you can identify the things that make you unhappy, the things that get on your nerves, the things that make you feel less than, then when you know you're going to approach them, you put on your armor. You put your mouth guard on, you put your helmet on, right, your shoulder pads, and you go into Thanksgiving dinner, you're ready. So no matter how obnoxious your cousin is, just bounces right off of you. And that evening when you leave, you feel great, as opposed to you leave the event and you feel crummy. You got to get control. This is every single tool is about control. What else? Oh, here we go. Oh, I like this guy. Here, I'm going to do two things simultaneously. I want you to hold up the Holy Grail. I want you to see the Holy Grail and the respectometer. The Holy Grail, I named it that because this is the ultimate tool on healing. Remember a little while ago where I say, hey, is this you? And I said, hey, how many of you keep your self-commitments? Not a lot of people do a good job of that. Why? Because they put themselves second. They have difficulty feeling deserving. And they sabotage themselves. So what you do, this is a roadmap to show you that the only way to heal and the only way to get control is to start with self-commitments. Self-commitments lead to respect. Respect leads to trust. Trust leads to love. Your job here is to love yourself. That's the most important thing. All of this will help you. So if we go back to the second piece of it is respect. The respectometer, this is what you do, and this is in the moment, right? I made a commitment. There's a hamburger place down the street here, right? That like hole in the wall, whatever that place is called. Great hamburgers. I had a hamburger there a couple of many weeks ago. So when I'm coming here to do this thing, I said, you know what, we're done. Let's go have a hamburger. I said, are you crazy? You just lost 5 pounds. You're going to put 5 pounds eating a hamburger. I said, yeah, but I think you need a reward. I think you need to have this hamburger. So it meets my childish sabotage side says, oh, go do it, right? And my adult side is going, you're crazy. How are you going to feel driving home after eating that greasy, fantastic burger? Are you going to have more respect for yourself or less? Are you going to feel guilty? Yeah, I won't have any respect for myself. Perfect, let's not do it. That's how simple it is. You have to be present. You have to ask yourself this question. How do you feel? How will you feel if you go ahead and do this thing? Not to say that you can have the conversation, be clean about it, and go, yeah, it's like we just had, with Passover. Going to my cousin's house, cooks a lot. You know what, Peggy? I'm taking the leash off of you tonight. You can eat anything you want. I'm like, good. So I went ahead, I did it. I didn't feel guilty. It wasn't a question of respect. I made a conscious choice that I felt that I had control over. So the respectometer, just keep it in your head, use it all the time, and it applies to every single thing that you do. It applies to actions. Because you know that you shouldn't have Coke. Ooh, it's working. You shouldn't be having Diet Coke. And if you've made a commitment to stop drinking soda, which we talked about, right, what's going to happen? Every time the Diet Coke comes up, how are you going to feel about yourself? Because the name of the game is control and having respect of yourself, because then you can demand it of others. If you don't have respect for yourself, it's a joke to get someone else to treat you with respect, because after all, you don't feel you deserve it. All right, what else do we have? Whoop, got that. Okay, so you have parts of your life, all of us have parts of our lives that we have been foolish about. Of course, none of them would ever apply to me. And how do we manage? Because again, if the whole point of this exercise, the whole point of our journey is to have love, how do you have love without compassion? You can't. You're supposed to live this life. You're supposed to chew this life up and live passionately, make mistakes, and then turn around and forgive yourself for it, because you are on a learning. What's going on with this thing here? You're trying to learn about yourself, and you can't learn about yourself staying home. So I created this chant, and again, it's about being centered, because let's say you're having a really bad day at the office, your boss is yelling at you, your assistant isn't doing what she's supposed to be doing, and you feel like jumping out the window. Thank God you're on the first floor, right? And you're out of control, because you're angry. You're angry, you feel powerless, as we'll talk about that in a second with depression, and all you want to do is go home and have a glass of wine. But guess what? Guess who's controlling you? All those feelings are controlling you. And not that they're not legitimate, but you got to manage it. So, one of the things you need to do, besides going to your list of 10 and 10 likes and dislikes, you're going to take some time to yourself. You're going to go down the list of things that you can do sitting in your office. Well, maybe you can't get an ice cream, but in my case, I love to write. I will take out, I don't care what it is, it could be toilet paper, and I can start to write, and it transforms you, it changes your energy, because what you want to get back is yourself. The second thing you do is then you do the chant. And I don't know if anyone here taps.
What is that? Like tap dance?
Oh, God. We're going to have so much fun the next time I come see you. Go look this guy up. His name is Brad Yates. Tapping is isolating and identifying the parts of your body that hold feelings. So, right, it sounds a little familiar? Yeah. So where are my glasses? Oh. So what tapping does is as you go through these parts of your body, tap, 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 and you do a chant, it releases the energy. Okay? So it's a fabulous exercise. You can even do it in your head when you get really good at it. You don't have to touch anything. But short of that, the chant that I gave you, it's really about opening your heart up. Because as angry as you are and as much you want to choke somebody, there's a point in all of that where it doesn't serve you. And you need to get you back, and you're only going to do it if you acknowledge someone else's damage, right? It's like you can't, if you think you got it hard, look at those women on the street with the shopping carts. Who has compassion for these people, right? You need to have compassion for yourself. You need to have compassion for things you've done wrong and compassion for somebody else. It doesn't mean you're condoning it. There's a big difference. Grant, if I could see. Great. Okay, so we're almost done. Okay, so here we go. We talked about control, building self-awareness. We haven't really talked about money tonight, and because I don't talk about money, actually. But what I do talk about is how to have self-awareness affects your ability to manage your money, manage your weight, manage anything that's going on in your life. If you don't have the vocabulary, you don't have the right tool. When I used to talk to people about isolation, when I do talk about isolation, they always think it's loneliness. They don't really know what isolation means until we start talking about isolation. They go, oh. So today, when they have isolation, they can identify it, and they don't get it confused with loneliness. Let's talk about, we're going to talk about, we got 10 minutes left. I got 4 topics here: shame, depression, isolation, and self-sabotage. Let's take a vote. I think we can get maybe 2 in. Who wants to talk about shame? Okay. Who wants to talk about depression? 1, 2, 3. Who wants to talk about isolation? 5. Who wants to talk about self-sabotage? Good. Okay. I didn't explain to you, where is this thing? I didn't explain to you that, remember I said you have 2 voices in my head? What I have in my head, my life, I said to you my life was split. I say to my therapist, what's going on here? Because when you come out of the birth canal, how everyone handles you, your mother included, tells you how you're going to survive. And what happens to children real early, they get the lay of the land, and they see who they are authentically is not acceptable. If they adapt and become a different persona, they will get their needs met. It's kind of like Darwin's theory, survival of the jungle, but it's really about your emotions and your psychological makeup. Those 2 drives are so powerful, they run your life. You have people, when I was one of them, when I was 58, it was finally like admitting that I had these 2 tracks, they weren't working, I couldn't live in this adapted world anymore, I couldn't have yet one more job, right? I had to be authentic. And who you are authentically, and we touched on this a little bit, is about being inside. My Nana, oddly enough, she was right. Teaching would make me happy, and it has. But all of you have desires, all of you have things that you don't take care of. And you have the power of choice. So what happens to these two tracks, and you have it in your face every single moment of the day with your mom, is you have to be a certain way in order to survive. And sometimes it just doesn't fit. In fact, it makes us angry. In fact, you say to yourself, what am I doing here? Either in a relationship or a job, it doesn't matter. We're wearing these jeans that were on sale. I bought them. It's like, oh, God, they don't fit me. What am I doing here? Right? We all do these things. So the point of it is to acknowledge that you have these two tracks. The sabotage comes into play. Sabotage is like this little 5-year-old inside of you who's constantly going to get in your way because she's scared. That's all it is. So when I asked you all to identify what was in the threshold of the doorway, right, and you shared a little bit of your insecurities, right, it's all fear. Everything you do comes from fear. And fear of what? Fear, this is the first time you've heard this, do not forget this, right? I'm going to have a red box around the statement. This is the coup de grace. And some of you may not like what you're going to hear, but it's what I live by. My feeling and my theory is that when you come out of the birth canal, it's a huge emotional change and spiritual change for a child. There's a sense of rejection coming out of the womb. You're leaving this fantastic hotel. God says, hey, time to go, okay. And what happens, again, the mother in those 9 months has to do certain things for the child to make them feel safe. But most of us, and I swear to God, I know it's like 99% of all of us, is that life doesn't really happen because there's a lot going on, especially you have siblings, especially a lot of stuff in a house. So what happens, our needs get pushed aside. And our needs at those ages are who we are authentically. Again, the child wants warmth, closeness, and acceptance. Well, if no one is giving that to the child who deserves it appropriately, guess what happens? The child gets a message of, I'm not good enough. That's where shame comes from. And the sabotage gets played out is that as you get older, you have this concrete slab of monsters. So if I go to be successful, or if I go to do this, I might get abandoned again. Should I say it again? This is like powerful. Abandonment, the last thing all of us want, and that's why I sometimes use the word safe a lot, is that the last thing we want, and what is acceptance about? It's the opposite of being rejected. We all want to be picked for the softball team. Nobody wants to sit on the sidelines, right? The worst thing a child can experience is to be abandoned a second time or a third time. They're cooked. That's it. They're done. They're just going to sign off. So we spend our adult life working against that, doing everything we can to not make the monster in the closet angry, to say, out, go, go, go. That was my issue. I was taught never to eclipse my brother. My mother drilled it in my head. No matter what I wanted to do, my brother came first. So you can imagine how that affected my 22 jobs and 4 businesses. It's like I didn't have permission to be who I was, and none of you are. None of you got permission to be authentic for the most part. Some things were encouraged, but if it made your caregivers uncomfortable, guess what? They took it away from you. Oh, don't do that. That's a waste of your time. I had a client, and one day she was telling her father how she felt, and I guess she was 10. And he says to her, that's not how you feel. And she goes, but Dad, it is how I feel. No, I'll tell you how you feel. That's the way a lot of parents are. And the key to it is anger. When I have someone in session, the third thing I say to them, how is anger dealt in your family? And you know what most kids say? I was sent to my room. I was punished even more. I was ignored. They give you these 5 or 6 classic answers. Anger is the best part of a child, because when they're having an issue, the most important thing that a mother or a father does is get eye level to eye level, because what does the child want? The child wants presence and patience. Did anyone grow up with presence and patience? I sure as heck didn't, right? We're running for cover constantly in my house. We're scrambling to get this tiny crumb of any emotions met. But that's what goes on with kids. Kids are simple. And if you pay attention to what their needs are, guess what? You still have those needs now. They're just disguised. They appear as symbols and metaphors. So I want to go over this, and this is really, really important. My theory is that our needs are constantly operating on this wavelength of getting met. What holds us back is the fear, the sabotage, the fear we will get abandoned again. So maybe that's why someone doesn't ask for a raise. Maybe someone doesn't return a phone call. Fear feeds on all of this stuff. So what you think is laziness, let's say you have a nephew or whatever, oh, he's just lazy. No, it's sabotage, because no one gave him permission to be himself. Everything changes, and you watch your own energy. If you go do the thing, let's say you have a hobby, if you go do the thing that gives you exquisite pleasure, you're lost. You're lost in whatever you're doing. That's who you are authentically. And if you can take that energy and apply it to other people, other pieces of your life, and constantly curry them to you, you're going to have a rich life. Does this make sense about the sabotage? Is anyone here guilty of self-sabotage? Apparently not. Okay. So I think we're